I'm not used to it. I'm used to it, applause at the end, but that's awesome and you're awesome. Spanish people are the best, really. I'll try to... Voy a tratar hablar de español un poquito. Bienvenido a mi charla. Gracias para venir de acá y solamente eso. So, that's it. Thank you. Okay, so this talk will be about technical documentation. How can I write them better and why should I care? And when I say I of course also mean you. But first of all, hi, my name is Hila. I'm a senior DevOps engineer and I work for Wix. I have 15 years of experience in the tech industry. I really love communities, so that's why I'm part of AWS Community Builders program, which allows me to connect with like-minded people and get exposed to a lot of cool AWS services in general. And I talk about Terraform a lot, so that's why I got recognized as HashiCorp ambassador as well. I'm a co-organizer of conferences in Israel, where I live, DevOps Days Tel Aviv, which is the largest DevOps Days in the world, if I'm not mistaken, and StatsCraft Monitoring Conference. I'm a mentor in courses and communities. I'm a DevOps culture fan. I think this is what helps companies achieve great things. And in my spare time, as you can see in this picture, I'm a lead singer in a cover band, and it is a lot of fun. Okay, so I believe that anyone can and should write technical documents. Why, I'm gonna cover in a bit, but just to give you like the tip of the iceberg is that since I'm a DevOps engineer, I manage incidents in production, and not all of the time things that happen are something that I know about, because maybe it's something that my team member did, like any task, any deployment. So a lot of the times we need runbooks in order to understand how to fix some issues. And in the middle of the night, if there's an issue and I don't know what to do because it's something that my team member did, I really don't care if the runbook that I found is written in a lousy English or a fabulous one. As long as I have a runbook, I'm satisfied, because then I can fix the issue, not be at loss. I can help my company meet their SLAs, and that's pretty much it. So really, what matters here is sharing the knowledge. So if you have this knowledge, please share it forward. So, as I like to say, if you can't automate it, then document it. And a lot of things that you can think of in our day-to-day can be established as technical documentation. So system logical design, of course, this is like the straightforward thing. But also on-call runbooks, as I just mentioned, code readmes in order to explain functions in the code, or if you have spaghetti code still in your department, then the documentation is good to really understand what's going on in that code. Onboarding docs to help your team members, new team members, get onboarded to your team, and then you avoid the need to have a buddy, because then you have the docs to help them onboard to the team. Even Slack pin messages, if you have knowledge, you can have things in Slack pin messages and people can get back to it and utilize that. And project planning doc, let's say you have migrations or any substantial projects, even the planning of that project could be considered as a technical documentation. And it doesn't mean that you have to utilize and write everything in that list. Even if you choose one and you share the knowledge that way, it will be very beneficial for you, for the future you, and for your team members and other departments and basically everyone. So, in a raise hands of anyone, if you ever said this sentence or heard this sentence before. My code is self-documented. That's it? Okay, I'm pretty surprised. I think that you're shy, but okay. So a lot of people say that sentence, that my code is self-documented, I don't need to add documentation to it. My code tells a story. No, it never is the case, okay? So we need to understand things in the code, either the functionality, spaghetti code, intentions, reasoning, a lot of things to cover. So please document things, and I will show you how to do it in a bit. So first of all, if I haven't convinced you until now, let's cover some more reasons why to write technical documents. So to reduce your work volume, and then you can say, wait, reduce? If I sit down and I write documents, then it increases my work volume because I waste time on documents. So I'm gonna share with you a story in order to understand what I mean. So since I'm a DevOps engineer, I help a lot of people, QA engineers, developers, and stuff like that. And a lot of times people came to me like, how to troubleshoot a pod in Kubernetes? What is this error? What is this? What is that? So And then I noticed that a lot of the approaches that I got were repeatable. So I gathered all the repetitive questions. I created a document called Tips and Tricks by DevOps. It was during COVID, so I created like a Zoom meeting. I covered all the document things that I covered there in that meeting, and then I gave them this document to use. That way, after, I think, every day I got approached like 7 or 8 times a day. After releasing this document, I got approached only 1 or 2 times a day. So in the long run, it does reduce your work volume, which is awesome. And also another thing that it does for the other side of the table is self-service enablement. So by utilizing this document, the QA engineers, the developers could help themselves. And I'm not longer a bottleneck to whatever they're trying to do. They can do it themselves, troubleshoot themselves, do things on their own, and that's great. So that's one example. Another example for self-service enablement and for increasing their velocity is also onboarding docs to help them join our team in the best way possible and avoid having a buddy to help them. And also, I'm going to cover several examples from a migration that I did between Bitbucket to GitLab, so you will hear it quite a lot in this presentation. So once I did the migration, I created a document for GitLab adoption. Why? Because this software wasn't known by other but by other departments that needed to now use GitLab. And yeah, you can find the details online, but I wanted to create a sense of ownership, and I wanted to have a document with the specific necessary information that they needed in order to utilize and adopt GitLab faster. So I created this doc, and that way they could utilize GitLab in the best way possible and very adopt it quickly. So this is another example. And also any documents with troubleshooting and even Slack bots with Q&A can be determined and used as a way for self-service enablement. Eliminate production incidents quicker. As I mentioned, if you have incident runbooks, then it will help you fix the issue, decrease MTTR, mean time to resolution, and help the company meet their SLAs, and of course, help you get back to sleep faster. Also, it will avoid a single point of failure or a bottleneck, which is you. And why? Because I will ask you this rhetorical question. Do you want to go on vacation and still be available for work calls, or do you want to be on vacation and still have your phone with you and your laptop and fix issues? I think I know the answer for that. So, and I also say it here, job security is dead, okay? Don't try to bottle things up, share the knowledge as much as possible, and hey, we have the threat of AI to take over our jobs, so let's prevent it from doing it and share the knowledge between us human beings in order to avoid this from happening. Another thing, it will help you, it will help make things clear for you or the future you, because let's say you did a project and then a year later you still need to support it. You don't remember the little details. You don't remember exactly how to upgrade if you do an upgrade once 6 months, okay? So in order to really understand or remember things, then you need to document them. And also, once you structure things and write them down in a clear manner, then it will help organize it in your mind as well. And also, things like intentions and reasoning and anything that is not straightforward, if you document it in a documentation, then it will help you to manage your systems, to help you defend the decisions that you're taking, etc. Visibility. So writing documentation will help you attract focus to the things that you do at work, which in turn will help you progress your career. Because if you do things, then they know what are your abilities, what you dealt with. They could get your advice on X, Y, Z. So it's only a good thing to do. And also, it's a tool to communicate things for your managers, because I don't know how it is here, but in Israel at least, they say, try to avoid writing a team player in your CV because it doesn't mean anything, because everyone writes it. So if you are communicating things and you're visible about that, then it really shown that you are a team player because you care about your team member success, about them knowing what's going on and not only bottling up your knowledge without sharing them with them. So yeah. And another thing, writing documentation, it forces you to ask always why. And understanding the why we're doing things in a certain way is good to be a better engineer and to defend the decisions that we are taking and to communicate them to others. And also it will develop your business mindset because always asking why will result in you striving for the best solution or implementation possible. So in the GitLab document that I wrote, this is an example that I documented there, like why did we set certificates here and how to renew them. In Terraform, why did I choose to create the model in a complex way? Usually it needs to be very straightforward and as simple as possible because of the KISS, keep it simple, stupid. But so why is it complex? Or also, why do they choose to do anything in a certain manner as opposed to like making sure clean code practices are being kept? In order to really understand that, I need to document it because nobody will ask me or even I wouldn't remember that like a year later. So documenting everything will help us cover the whys, and covering the why will help us to link our work to the business mindset, the business needs, and which is whatever we need to do because we are not working for ourselves. We're working for a company, and we always want to understand why are we doing the things that we are doing. Okay, so I hope that I convinced you enough. I really hope so. And now let's go to the practical way of how to write technical documents without being a technical writer, because we are not technical writers. I assume that we are all engineers here. So let's see what structure we should have when we are facing a need to write any technical document. So first of all, you need to know your audience. Based on your audience, you'll know what needs to be covered and to which extent. So this is your time to plan and write in bullet points what you're going to cover in your documents, and then you can elaborate whenever the time comes. So two types of audiences, both internal use, which is like system design, etc., and external use, which is like API documentation for your users. So what should I write about in terms of internal use for maintainers? Things that you worked on while working on them, because as you know, if we write doing the things that we do, it's still fresh in our minds, and that's good. And if you can't document it during the time of being, then at least add it to the bullet points list, so then you can remember to cover it later. Things that bugged you. So why? Because you don't want other people to run into these things as well. For example, once I worked on the GitLab migration, I opened tickets for support. And there was a ping pong between me and support. Why? I opened the ticket, I explained the issue, and then since it wasn't production yet, it was still in an ongoing migration, it took them like, I don't know, 2 or 3 days to reply, and then they replied with, please send us logs. How do I send logs? Run the CLI. I'm like, okay, and then I opened another ticket, and it happened again. Please send us logs. I'm like, okay, so why don't I do like, I'll prepare myself in advance, and when I open the ticket, I'll provide the logs needed in order to prevent this ping pong and wait these 3 days. So I encountered it, I covered it in the documentation. So if my team members need to open a ticket to support, now they can do it without wasting any time for them or for GitLab as well. So this is one example that come to mind, but anything that bugs you and you want to reduce time of management could be covered as well. Things that aren't clear or straightforward. Another GitLab example, on the migration and on the deployment of GitLab itself, I used DB version X. The DB version X that I use is not the one that is default in GitLab. Why did I do that? I had a very good reason. But my team members don't know that. If they read the documentation, now they know that there's a very good reason why I chose this version. And that way they know the reason. They are not at loss, like why did she do it? And most of all, they don't have any reason to revert my decision because I did it for the sake of future upgrades. So documenting things that aren't clear or straightforward is good because of that reason specifically. And anything else, like explaining flows, explaining spaghetti code, as I mentioned before, anything that could help unravel the unknown. In terms of external use for documentation for users or consumers, so write what is it about, possible use cases, and quick starts. Cover also any quirks, issues, and things to consider while using this X that you are working on. And any examples, both simple and complex, in order to help the user achieve whatever they are trying to do, achieve the usage of whatever you're writing about. The next phase is decide or abide upon documentation type. So either you are a manager and you can shift things in your company, or you already have a solution for documentation, which is, let's say, Confluence, which is a knowledge base that you need to use. Either that, you need to either abide, or if you can move to something else, that's good. What is that something else? Docs as code. Docs as code, and I'm going to cover it more in a bit, is basically a new method to work with docs in your code, in your IDE. So docs are fully integrated into the dev toolchain, and you don't need to leave your IDE in order to write documentation. And engineers doesn't like to leave their IDEs, so this is a very good solution for them. And I will cover it in a bit. So either you still use Confluence because your company is very well invested in that, or you say, hey, I was in this cool presentation about technical documentation. It is cool. Why? Because I learned about this method, and let's try to shift to that now. So before I jump the gun and talk about docs as code, I want to cover some general content guidelines for writing documentation. So first of all, have table of contents in your document. Basically, it is essential for content discovery. And why is that? Because of how users approach documents. So this is the user flow. And I found online an article from 1997 that says that people don't read, they scan. And this is applicable for everyone. So whenever someone is searching for something in a document or in a search bar, they write something in the title. So that's why you should have meaningful titles and subheadings. And then they see some results in the search. And then they scan for the results to see if it's something that could be helpful for them or not. If it's helpful, awesome. They found what they are looking for, but if not, they now need to navigate to somewhere else, to another document. So that's why you should have links in your document to cover anything that isn't appropriate for that kind of document that you wrote. So for example, if you have written how to document, so have a link to more information about the system. And then if the user basically wants to know the information and he just Googled by accident how to, then they can get to whatever you're trying to have. And you can think about it like microservices. So every document is a microservice that stands on its own, but they can integrate or they can communicate with other microservices as well, aka links to other documents. So have a document per usage, per like how to, and I will cover it in a bit, and then links to other types of documents as well. Highlights. So use bold whenever possible if you want to extend something to understand that it is important. And why? Because again, people skim through the document. They don't really read it. So in order to help them skim through and scan, then bold is the way to go. And also in terms of colors, this is a bit controversial because of accessibility issues and some people are colorblind. But at least in my experience, I felt that once I put things in red, then the developer was, okay, I will be aware of that. So if you can utilize colors, it is useful as well. Words and sentences. So again, we want to help the users scan the document and not because they don't really read it at first. So let's use short words and more sentences rather than longer words and fewer sentences in order to help the users achieve exactly that. And please, please, please don't try to be Shakespeare, okay? Write simple American English that non-English speakers can easily understand, and that will be the most useful thing for your users. Okay, docs as code, I promised it, now let's cover it a bit. So, docs as code is basically documents that are written in Markdown, which means that you can still utilize table of contents and highlights and even colors as well. They are plain text, so they are human readable. They are easy to write in diff, and they are platform agnostic, so you can integrate them wherever you'd like, and it will be very seamless to use. The docs folder is inside in the same code repo, so it is integrated in the dev toolchain. There's no need to leave the IDE in order to write documents. And it can be integrated in the PR review as well. So you want to make sure that the document is a high quality, you can do that. You want to make sure that the document even exists, you can do it as well. So, and then you can also say that if the document is not updated based on the snippets that were changed, or document is not even there, then the PR will fail to merge. And you can even utilize CI/CD for documents. So you can do validations and to check that there are no broken links, and to apply linters. And there are two tools that I haven't used myself, but I've seen demos and they look awesome. So Docosaurus and Swim. Swim is an Israeli company, and they have a lot of cool features of how to make and really make sure that the documents are not stale, and they update it for you once you update snippets of code. It's awesome. I really, and they don't pay me money to say that. I really believe in the product because it looks so good. So if you're really willing to take the extra step and you understand that documentation is very, very important, you can utilize these tools or other tools that you can find in order to help you make sure that documents are kept as up to date. And as you can see on the right, there's a quote by Google. They say that docs thrive when they've treated like tests. A necessary chore one learns to savor because it rewards over time. And it definitely rewards over time because of all of the things that I mentioned before in the previous section. Okay, so next phase of writing a document, like a structure of writing a document, is to remember the audience. So we first said that we need to know our audience. Now we need to remember them. So basically have the user flow in mind, in and between sections, and write the document in an order that will make sense for skimming the document and for the purpose of that document. So for example, the GitLab doc, I told you that I'm mentioning it a lot. I warned you. So how to upgrade. This is first. Why? Because the GitLab had a lot of releases. Like every 2 weeks they release. You don't have to upgrade, but because I wanted to let them the ability to do that, the first thing that I covered in the document is how to upgrade. And then certificates. Why? Because certificates, you need to renew them every 2 years. And then integrations with Jenkins, with Jira, which you need only when you deploy GitLab for the first time. So I covered this in an order where they can find whatever they're looking for as quickly as possible and then get back to their tasks. Concept versus tasks. So remember what I said, like treat documents as microservices and have the document in one type only. That's exactly it. You need to think about what your audience wants. So if they want to know something, aka concepts, then you should write information, background, explanations, reasoning, and intentions. But if they want to do something, tasks, then you need to write a how-to. And don't confuse the two. Don't mix how-to with information and vice versa, because then it will make it very hard on your readers to get back to their tasks as soon as possible. If they want to do something, give them the to-do, and then put a link to the information, and vice versa. And basically, that's the last part of the document. After you've written a document, now let's share it with your peers. And why? Because some things are straightforward for you, but not really straightforward for them. You need to understand if what you have written is very helpful and really helpful for them. So give them the document, and maybe they will ask, hey, what is this initial? And while you thought that this initial is like straightforward, they don't know it. So ask them, see if it's helpful, do some iterations in order to add some stuff or clarify some stuff that is not really clear to them. And then the document will be in a ready enough state for other people to use. And I promised you that this talk will show you how to write a technical document without being a technical writer, but if you still want to perfect your English, if you want to write documents in a high quality state, English-wise, and some tips about writing in general, then you can scan this QR code. I curated this document, and I'm gonna add some more tips to it. Tips by me and tips by a technical writer who's a colleague of mine in Wix, Joshua Schulgasser. So if you do care about writing tips and stuff like that, you can find it in this document. I'll give you one more minute. No, not minute is a lot. 10 seconds. 9, 10, okay. So basically, that's it. So for those of you who say, hey, I'm not a technical writer, I can't write documents, and I don't remember what you said here because you said a lot of things, just remember this golden rule that provide readers with the information that they need and send them back to their tasks as soon as possible. And documentation should always be clear, simple, and to the point. And remember that what you write is very, very useful as long as it is helpful and concise and clear. So always have that. And for the managers of you here in this room, if you want to make sure documentation is part of the day-to-day and you don't have a CI/CD yet, you don't utilize any tools yet, and you still want to make sure that people write documentation, how can you do that? By setting or defining a task definition of done. So only once documentation was added, then you can close the ticket and you can say that everything is done. So that is one tip, but I said it's for managers, but I lied, it's not really for managers. It's also for people like you that understand that documentation, I mean, you're here and you talk about documentation. So you understand that documentation is important. And you can say, hey, I know this task is urgent, so I will release whatever is needed, but if I can get 2 more days or 2 more hours to add some documentation for your team leader, I'm sure that they will appreciate this request and they will allow you this time. So now I really hope that after this talk, you can say that your code is well documented. Thank you very much.